Welcome to Career and Leadership Real Talk, the no-nonsense guide for ambitious managers who want to have more impact and progress their career. I'm Pamela Langan, a job search coach and expert CV writer specialising in helping frustrated professionals land the jobs and pay rises they know they deserve.
And I'm Jackie Jagger, a leadership and mindset coach specialising in helping newly promoted and new to role leaders to avoid the dickhead trap and lead with confidence. Between us, we've helped hundreds of leaders and managers to find new roles, take ownership of their careers, and handle the challenges that job searches and leadership responsibility inevitably bring. And now we're joining forces to share with you what we know has worked for our clients.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode. Today, we are talking about the 5 steps to making the most of working with an executive coach. Because we did cover a few months back around how to choose the coach. But what we see a lot of is people who really want coaching, when they get to those initial sessions, they're not quite sure what to focus in on and what are the most important things that they would like to move forward with. So this episode is to help you make the most of working with a coach, to get the absolute most out of each session. And we're even going to give you a download with some pointers around things to think about before you get to those sessions as well. So what is number one? What is the first thing we need to think about when we're making the most of working with a coach?
So the first thing is still choosing the right coach. And we have done the whole episode, so we'll link to that in the show notes. But I think what's worth reiterating here is the fundamental thing is you want to work with a coach where you can be yourself and talk openly. So you don't always, if an organization is providing you with executive coaching or leadership coaching, then sometimes you don't get a choice as to who you get to work with. But very often, even in that situation, there might be a choice of 2 or 3. And I think that bit for me is always really crucial because you'll get the most out of coaching when you're able to put the most in. And if you feel like you can completely be yourself and open up to somebody, then that allows for that to happen far more quickly and more easily. And then the other thing I would say on choosing the coach is to think about, do you want someone where you're looking at pure coaching, which would be where they will ask you questions, they will structure the session, but they're not going to guide or advise or give you any steer on what you should do. And then at the other side, you've got people who are much more advisory, where a coaching session might involve exploring or talking about tools that you can use as a leader and sharing kind of guidance and advice. And sometimes you might want a bit of a mix. So coaches will work with their own kind of preferred approach. So you need to know that your coach will be able to deliver the style that is most suitable for what you need. When I first had exec coaching, I was very new into my first senior leadership role, and I wanted some of those suggestions or frameworks or ideas to be shared. So it wasn't giving me advice and saying you should go away and do this, but some of the frameworks that coach shared with me, things that I've then implemented in my own career and continue to implement for years afterwards. So they didn't just ask me great questions, they introduced me to some great frameworks and approaches that really helped me to build my confidence. And I think it's really key for people to consider what stage are you at, and do you need somebody where you've got that kind of reflective space and no guidance or advice, or are you going to want the coach to potentially share some of those, even if they're not advising as such? You might want that situation where somebody is going to support with that kind of thing. So check out that your coach will do that. Otherwise, you're going to be really frustrated if you want guidance and frameworks and advice and that coach is completely pure coaching. And likewise, if you just want that thinking space and you've got someone that's starting to introduce things, you've now got, this is not coaching, this is not what I wanted. So yeah, make sure that the approach matches what you're most wanting, what you will get most benefit from.
Yeah, and I think that is a perfect overview of that, because it's really key to really think about what you want to get out of that and to make sure that person can provide exactly what you need, or at least be able to point you in the right direction. So what's number 2?
So the second thing is, and all of the remaining aspects of how to get the most out of coaching are looking at your responsibilities as a coachee. So what can you put in as a coachee that will allow you to get most out from working with a coach? And the first of those is about mindset and preparation. So this is about really being specific about what you want to get from working with a coach. So being intentional about the point of how you want to use that time and what you want to get back as a result. But it's also that kind of thinking around before you go into coaching sessions, how do you prepare for those? What kind of mindset do you show up with when you are going into coaching? So I would always advise coachees to really think about how can you best create the environment where at the point that we start our conversation, you are best placed to do really good thinking. And that can involve considering what environment do you need to be in. It can be about having a notebook and pen so that you can capture thoughts and insights. And I always suggest to people that they keep some kind of coaching journal or notebook so that throughout the time of working together, that they can have one place to capture their thoughts from the sessions, but also before and after the sessions, because I think that element is so key.
Yeah, and I also, one of the things from my own experience of coaching is thinking about what time of the day is best for you to be coached as well. Because if you're a morning person, it might be good to do it first thing so that you're on it, you've got that clear head. You might even have time to do some meditation or whatever before to really get that clear mind. Or you might be somebody that is better later on in the afternoon or just after lunch, or maybe it's even in the evening. But it's about thinking about what time of the day works best for you, because I know afternoons and early evening for me, that's the time when I'm starting to like wind down, because I get up, I'm usually up like 5:30, 6 o'clock every morning. I don't recommend that for everyone or advise that people do that, but that's just how I like to work. But what that means is that by early afternoon, I'm starting to feel a little bit tired. So that's not an ideal time for me to receive coaching. So it's definitely something to think about, what time of the day works best for you, because you will get more out of it if you've got a clear mind and you're ready to go and think. And those thought-provoking questions that a coach will ask you, if you've got the right amount of headspace, you'll get so much more from that session.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing is also to give yourself some kind of time and space before each session. So before your first session, it may be that you are reflecting about, what do I want to get from working with my coach? However many sessions we've got, or however long we get to work together, where do I want to be at the end point? I will quite often give potential new coachees some reflection questions to steer some of that thinking and open it up for them. So your coach may have some questions that can help you prepare, but also it's about thinking, when you come to coaching, sometimes you'll be in a structured program. So you might have a series of things that you are going to cover. More often than not, with leadership and executive coaching, you are tailored to what it is that your goals are from the coaching program as a whole. And it's relatively fluid and flexible in terms of what you might cover. So as a coachee, if you give yourself some time and space before the session, then you can start to reflect and consider what would be most helpful from this particular session. So if that's where I want to get to longer term, what are the things that are coming up and what might be most helpful for me to discuss today or to deepen my thinking around? And this is the one where we've got the download with some prompts, because I think people often can draw a blank at this point. So it's, I don't know, I've just been busy doing my thing since the last session, or I'm not really sure what would be most helpful. So I think sometimes, again, some of those prompts can really help to pinpoint, oh, actually, that would be really helpful for me to spend some time reflecting on, and having someone else draw some stuff out could really benefit.
Yeah, and I think that is the key, isn't it? Just having that thinking time. We always say this, don't we? Reflection is key. That thinking time is key, but it actually really is, because sometimes people will go into coaching sessions not really knowing what they want to get out of it, and they'll go through the session and it'll still be a great session, but then afterwards they will definitely think there could have been so much more I could have got out of that, or I would have liked to address something else. And then by this point, and then by the time you get to the next session, sometimes you'll have forgotten them things. So writing them down and keeping notes and keeping track, because naturally once you get into a cycle of coaching, you will start almost self-coaching as well in between those sessions, because you'll do more reflection than you would have done previously. You'll be thinking about what happened in those sessions, and you will really start to expand your thinking around certain areas, and that all of this good stuff starts coming out. And usually, like, my clients will say, oh, I was in Tesco's, or I was in the shower, and all of these thoughts came to mind. And I'm like, write them down or keep track in the notes on your phone, because that is going to be key for you to get the most out of your coaching, whether it's stuff that you will address, stuff that you'll self-reflect on. It's all good stuff, and you're bringing it all to the front of your brain and starting to address all of the different things that come up. And you never know when a thought will strike. They'll come all different times.
Yeah. And I think as well, it can often be really helpful when you're going into a coaching session, if there isn't a particular kind of work conundrum or challenge or thing. Sometimes there are very clear things that people bring to coaching sessions. So it might be a particular challenge within their team, or how do I more effectively influence my peers? I need to think through what I need to propose as a team structure. All of those are really specific. And I think when you haven't got those, often what can be really helpful is to use your coaching sessions to really do some of that deeper reflective work on your own professional development as a leader. And so that can often be a little bit uncomfortable, because there isn't necessarily a specific challenge, but it might be, for example, about feedback that you've received and should you act on it. It might be, for example, about a longer term view of where do I want my career to take me, and how equipped am I going to be given the skill set and the tools that I currently have in order to get there. So sometimes with the lack of a specific things that you really need that time and space to talk through, some of that deeper work. So a helpful question can sometimes be, what would actually be quite uncomfortable for me to talk to my coach about? What am I trying to avoid having to think about in terms of my own personal and professional development? And that question can sometimes point to some stuff that you maybe would really benefit from, but are a bit apprehensive of because you've got to go there. But that's where the growth is.
Yeah, facing it head on is definitely going to help you develop. So, number 3, what is our third step?
So, this is about being really active in creating and building the coaching relationship. And I think when people have coaching for the first time, like you said, if you get to a certain level and your organization supports you with coaching, you may not know what to expect. You don't anticipate what does it look or feel like to be in a coaching conversation. And so what can happen is that people then sometimes are a little bit passive. And what I find is that the coachees that get the most out of coaching are the ones who are really active in making that coaching relationship work for them. So this is being clear on expectations. And coaches should be creating what's called coaching contract, where things like ethics, confidentiality, and a lot of the logistics will be covered. And coaches will structure the sessions, but there might be things, for example, where you might say, do you know what, today I'm really up for loads of challenge, throw it at me. And another day, I'm really feeling my resilience has been tested. I am not up for as much challenge as I might otherwise be. So by being really proactive in terms of how you clarify and are explicit about what's most helpful for you on that particular day, as well as more generally, then you can really actively build that relationship with that coach in a way that best allows you to get what you need from it.
Yeah, and I think that is the key, isn't it? It's about leaning into how you're feeling, owning that as well, and being really honest. Just because you've got that coaching session booked in, if you're not feeling 100% or there's other things going on, you don't have to share those with the coach, but it's just about letting them know how you're feeling and where your head's at, because that can then help that coach to create that session that means that you will get the most out of it. Because if they don't know what's going on in your head, then they'll just go through the process of asking you questions and probing different things. If they know where you're coming from, at least then they can be a bit sensitive around different areas, or if things come up, they might know then that you need more time to reflect on that. So in terms of step 4, what is our step 4?
So this is commit and engage. And I guess it really flows on from that point of being very active in taking ownership for how that relationship develops. And this, I remember the second time that I had exec coaching, I remember my coach saying to me, wow, you're really committed to this, aren't you? And I was a bit like, yeah, wouldn't everybody be if you get this? To me, it was a real opportunity. I felt that the organization had invested in me and I was all in. But since training and now coaching, I reflect and I'm like, now I have a bit more insight into why they said that. So I think very often when people are busy, what I notice is that they may then not prioritize their coaching. So it may be, oh, I'm flat out. Can I postpone that session or can I do it later? And so they don't fully commit and engage, and they see it as another thing on their list. And actually, the time when you really need good thinking time is when you are flat out and your resilience is being tested. So it's not a case of just see it as a nice thing to do. See it as a tool to help you to get further in your professional development in whatever form that coaching is going to take for you, but really prioritize it. Make sure that you show up to those sessions. Make sure that you, like we've said before, are somewhere that you can talk openly, somewhere where you're not going to be interrupted, somewhere where you're not going to be distracted, and really commit to being open and being prepared to be uncomfortable in some of the conversations to get to the bottom of how do I grow myself as a result of working with this coach. Because when you fully are all in with that coaching relationship and you're prepared to completely be yourself and you're prepared to open up, then that's when you'll get most out.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think in my experience of coaching people, sometimes when things come up that do feel quite uncomfortable, people can then start thinking, oh, maybe I didn't want to address that in any more detail. Maybe I'll just postpone the next session so I've got more time to think about it. And then they lose that commitment, and basically what they're doing is just putting it off because they don't want to address that thing. And that's the best time, isn't it, to address it when it's feeling uncomfortable, when it's stirring up loads of emotions. And both of us are experienced coaches. We will see every emotion in those sessions from males and females. People will go through a whole range of emotions when we're working with them, and that's absolutely fine. And that's why, going back to point 1, it's really important that you choose the right coach. So any final points then on commit and engage?
The other one that I would say with this, and I'd be interested in your perspective, is I think as a coachee is when you do commit and you engage and you're prepared to be open, is to be mindful of not falling into the trap of spending lots of time storytelling. So telling your coach all these things that have happened, all this context, all of what's gone on, chapter and verse on a situation. Because I think when you do feel able to fully be open and transparent and know that you're not going to be judged for it, sometimes there can be that temptation. But storytelling, giving context, can suck you into staying in that situation. And actually, your coach very often doesn't need to know all of the ins and outs. And I think it's balancing, sharing enough to allow the coach to ask good questions that will give you a different perspective on the situation without falling into the trap of, I'm going to tell you everything, and actually what I want is validation, and I want you to make me feel like I'm in the right in this situation that I'm telling you about.
Yeah, I think that comes up quite often, doesn't it? And one of the things that you can do to really help with that is to journal, is to write it down, is to get it out your head, is to play that story through in your own mind and then put it on the paper. Once you commit it to paper or you type it out or whatever you do, it doesn't have the same effect. It doesn't hit the same emotions. You can think about it more logically. So I think with that, and you're absolutely right, like the coach doesn't need to know the ins and outs. And I think sometimes people feel like, I need to give you the backstory because I don't want you to make any judgment on me, on my character. And as a coach, that is not what your job is. Your job isn't to make any form of judgment on that person. It's about, how do I move this person forward? So in terms of the stories that sit behind the things that you want to work on, it's always good to get them out of your head. And sometimes those things might come up in that session, and that's where your notebook and pen is really useful, because then you can jot it down and then you can go back and run through that story later, and you can just stick to the key points and know that your coach is not going to make any form of judgment around things that have happened with you or for you in the past. And again, that goes back to point one again of making sure that you're choosing the right coach. Step number 5, our final one.
So the final one is all about taking action, because what I think is the saddest thing is if you work with a client and you feel like the rapport is really strong and they feel really committed in the sessions and they come and they're prepared, and then you come to the next session and actually they've just been really busy and gone back to the day job and everything has stayed the same. So the whole point of coaching is to be a catalyst and facilitate change in whatever form that needs to be for you. And so you have to be prepared beyond committing in terms of being within the session. You've got to be prepared to take action outside of the sessions. The coach cannot do that for you. They are not with you day in, day out to be able to do that. And I think a really simple thing is to capture your thoughts immediately, either within the session or immediately after. And from that, to really highlight one thing that you can put into practice. And if appropriate, put that in your diary. If it's something that requires you to actually do something, so whether that's having a conversation or seeking out some feedback or doing some research or whatever it may be, put that thing in your diary as a commitment to yourself immediately after the session.
Yeah, and I think that there'll always be at least one thing, won't there, from every session. Like, I'll be surprised if there isn't at least one action or one thing that you can do following that session in order to move yourself forwards. And whether that is actually doing something specific or whether it's putting in time to reflect about what you've talked about or what's come up in that session, it's super important that you just take one action each time, and you will see that will help you to almost keep it all together and keep moving forward as well.
Yeah. I think it can also really help to share your commitments with other people, whether you talk to your boss about what you've been discussing within your coaching session and what you're intending to do so that you've made that commitment to them, whether that is a trusted colleague, somebody in your personal life completely outside of work, whether it's your coach. You create, when you tell somebody, I'm going to do this, you create an external commitment as well as an internal commitment. And very often that external commitment that you make is powerful in increasing the chances and the motivation to actually do the thing, whatever the thing might be.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, isn't it? Is there any final things around taking action that you would recommend?
Yeah. And I say this one because a lot of my clients are pretty high achieving. They're very smart. They're very switched on and they like to do things well. When you are making change, unfortunately, you have to be prepared to do things badly in order to do them well. And I think that can be one of the biggest blockers is that people want to think their way into being able to do something well and wait until they can do it well before they will do it at all. And you have to be prepared to do things imperfectly. And I love the way that a previous client of mine phrased it, where she went, I don't have to do it brilliantly, just enthusiastically. And I was like, yes, exactly that. Commit to it, do something with enthusiasm, and then get feedback and data on how well did that go? Did that go the way that you hoped and expected? Give yourself that feedback on how do I improve it for next time. But you've got to be prepared to do things badly in order to do things well. Sorry, them's the rules.
I love that though, because it's so true, isn't it? Because I think that's one of the things, isn't it, that really hampers progression. It's, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it perfectly, or I don't even know what it actually will look like in reality, but it's just getting stuck in, isn't it? And having a go.
Yeah. It really is. And it makes such a difference. And I was talking to a new client about this just recently, where they know that not doing it is really going to block their career. And it's hard. But a big part of it is that you've got to let go of judging yourself. And you've got to let go of this feeling that if you do something badly, that's a problem or that there's something wrong with you. And I think often people fear other people judging them. And in reality, that's a projection. What you're doing is you're going to judge yourself. You're going to get in there first before someone else judges you. And so you don't want that discomfort of judging yourself for doing it badly. So you avoid doing it. And that is an absolute opposite to the way to get the most progression.
Yeah, I think that's key, isn't it? You've just got to get stuck in and do these things if you want the progression. So we hope that you found this week's episode useful and that you've taken at least one thing away that you will think about or work on when you're thinking about making the most of your coaching sessions. If you are interested in working with either of us or seeing if we're the right match for you, then please do get in touch. Don't forget to share the podcast and also rate and review us on your favorite podcast platforms. And we will be back next week with another episode.
Exciting news from us. If you're an ambitious leader or manager earning 50k or more and you're ready to take your career to the next level, we have an opportunity for you. Introducing Catalyst Career Club, your secret weapon for unlocking career success. As a member, you'll get access to monthly live training sessions, exclusive job opportunities, and the ability to get personalised advice from us on your toughest career challenges.
We've helped thousands of driven leaders like you secure significant pay rises, land dream roles, and thrive in their careers. And now we want to support you in achieving your most ambitious career goals too. Membership is just $6.99 per month with no contract or tie-in. And as a special bonus for being our podcast listeners, you can use the code podcast at checkout to get your first month for just £1. Head over to pamelalangan.com/Catalyst Career Club to sign up now, and we'll see you inside.